Get out, you lowlife. We don't need uneducated trash in this family. That's what my father roared, veins bulging, his voice breaking as he jabbed a finger toward the door like I was something rotten. My mother stood just behind him, arms crossed, nodding in approval. No hesitation, no second thoughts. I'm Camille, and wherever you're hearing this from, stay with me. Have you ever had your own family spit on your dreams, only to later grovel for a piece of the future they once mocked? It started as what was supposed to be a simple dinner, a rare trip home to check in. But instead of conversation, I found myself in a firing line. I sat at their dining table in jeans and sandals, trying to share what I'd been working on. Tech ventures, real estate partnerships, startup equity investments. None of it impressed them. You never even finished college, my dad sneered. You're still sitting in cafes with that laptop like some con artist, my mom added. Then came the line that cut deeper than anything. You're just pretending to be successful. You'll be crawling back before long. I stared at their smug faces, at the living room I'd once helped renovate with my own hands, and felt nothing. Just clarity. I pushed my chair in, picked up my purse and keys and said one word. Okay. They laughed as I walked out, certain they'd just watched me slink away in defeat. What they didn't know was that the so-called cafe scammer had just closed a $7.8 million deal, that the uneducated trash owned majority shares in a fintech company valued at over $200 million. I wasn't walking away in shame. I was heading home to my oceanfront Florida estate, where the waves listened better than my family ever had. 3 weeks later, the calls started, not apologies, but pleas for help. Their bank accounts were frozen, their house was in foreclosure, their golden retirement plan exposed as a Ponzi scheme. Suddenly, the daughter they'd disowned looked a lot like their lifeline. The first missed call came on a Thursday. Unknown number, straight to voicemail. Then another. And another. By Sunday there were 16 missed calls, all from my mother. The same woman who once called me a mistake that should have known my place. Now her voicemails began with "Camille, sweetie, we need to talk," and ended with, "Please, it's urgent." I didn't call back. I was too busy watching the sunrise from my balcony, sipping coffee made by my personal chef, and reviewing a third buyout offer from a major venture capital firm desperate to get in on my newest platform. Life gets peaceful when you cut out the noise, especially the kind that only clapped when you were small. Then they showed up in person. I was driving back from yoga when my security desk called. "Ma'am, there's an older couple here who say they're your parents." I paused, smiled, and told them, "I'm not available. Please remind them this building doesn't allow unapproved guests." 10 minutes later, I watched the security footage. My father was pacing. My mother dabbing at tears she hadn't earned. Both looking lost, as if they'd just realized how far down they'd thrown me, and how far up I'd climbed without them. They'd never believed I could build anything worth having, so they couldn't recognize the world I'd built. Back when I dropped out of college, they'd even held a family meeting without me, deciding I was a lost cause. They told relatives I was scraping by, working for some shady website. What I was actually doing? Creating a financial algorithm now used by one of the fastest growing credit unions in the Southeast. My team calls me the quiet billionaire in sneakers. I just call it freedom. Freedom from their expectations, their limitations, and their permission. I no longer carried shame, nor did I waste breath begging people who never saw my worth to finally recognize it. That evening, my father sent a final text. "We're struggling. We need your help. Just a small loan until things get better." I read it twice before replying with 3 words. I thought I was trash. The message showed as delivered, then read no reply. Because when someone throws you out like garbage, they don't get to come knocking 3 weeks later asking for gold. The silence that followed stretched for 3 full days. No calls. No texts. No voicemails full of desperate apologies. Just a heavy, uncomfortable quiet. The kind that settles when people are finally forced to face the reflection they've been avoiding their whole lives. But I wasn't waiting on their response. I was busy. Busy closing a new funding round with 2 Silicon Valley partners and a private equity firm from Dubai. Busy reviewing blueprints for my second property in Miami. Busy living the exact life they swore I'd never have without a degree or their approval. On the 4th day, my sister called. We hadn't spoken in over a year, Not since she made fun of me at Thanksgiving for chasing internet money, all while sipping wine I had bought. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. They're not okay, she said. Dad's had 2 panic attacks. Mom's barely eating. I think they realized they went too far. I stayed silent, so she kept going. I'm not asking you to forget. Just help them stay afloat. They're scared. Finally, I spoke. Do you remember what Mom called me? What Dad yelled in my face? There was a long pause before she whispered yes. Then answer me this, I said evenly. If they hadn't fallen, would they have ever reached out? She didn't answer, because we both knew they wouldn't have. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me who never said no, who quietly paid their bills, who showed up with gifts after being told I was unworthy. But that version was gone. In her place stood a woman who wore peace like a crown and refused to explain her success to people who couldn't spell respect. That night, I wrote an email to my parents. Professional, calm, final. I'm sorry for your situation, truly. But this is the life you told me I didn't deserve. The same life you mocked me for building. I will not fund comfort for people who chose cruelty when kindness would have cost nothing. I wish you healing, but from a distance. Then I signed it, Camille, and hit send. No tears. No hesitation. Because closure doesn't always come from an apology. Sometimes it's the decision not to walk back through a door, even when it's left wide open. By the weekend, the media had picked up my story. Not the family drama, but the empire. A major business magazine ran a headline. From college dropout to fintech queen. How Camille R. built a $45 million fortune from scratch. The article featured a photo of me barefoot on the balcony of my beach house, wind in my hair, coffee mug in hand reading self-funded. The piece spread fast. Old classmates reached out. Former bosses. Even 2 ex-boyfriends who had once doubted me suddenly wanted to catch up. And yes, my parents saw it. I know because my sister sent me screenshots of their group chat. Mom had written, "She's embarrassing us publicly. This is unnecessary." Dad replied, "She's just doing it for attention." Always a performer. Even after everything, after the years of cruelty, after the world celebrated the daughter they had cast aside, they still couldn't say one word. Proud. But I no longer needed it. The world didn't validate me. I validated me. That Sunday, I hosted a small gathering. 10 people. Investors who had taken a chance on me when others didn't. Friends who stood by me when family shut the door. We raised our glasses to building something real, something they could never take away. We outgrew the rooms they swore we'd never leave. We survived the kind of guilt daughters are told to carry. Guilt for succeeding without permission. As the sun dipped low, someone asked me, "Camille, would you ever forgive them?" I paused, not because I was unsure, but because the answer deserved the weight of silence before it landed. "I already have," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." They nodded, because they understood. Forgiveness is mine to give. But letting someone back in? That's a privilege, not a right. Later that night, a new text came from a blocked number. "We saw the article. Can we come see you?" I didn't reply. They didn't want to see me. They wanted to stand beside the success they once mocked. And my table has no seats for people who laughed while I built it. On Monday morning, my lawyer called. "Camille, your parents' financial advisor reached out. They're about 6 months behind on property taxes. He's asking if you'd consider giving them a loan." I let the silence breathe before I answered. "Send them my rates. This is business." At first he chuckled, thinking I was joking. Then he realized I wasn't and his tone changed. Understood. Because this wasn't family anymore. It was business. And they were the ones who taught me the rules. When you're not respected as a daughter, you stop giving love like one. I wasn't cold, I was clear. The same clarity they had when they called me uneducated trash. The same clarity in my father's voice when he pointed to the door and told me to get out. Now the door was locked. The doormat gone. The threshold guarded by the value they'd never seen in me. That week, they tried another route. My aunt called. "Camille, honey, I know they were harsh, but they're old school. They didn't mean it like that." But they did. Every word. Every insult. Every glance of disappointment when I refused to go back to college. Every eye roll when I mentioned I was coding. I remember Dad telling a neighbor, "She just does internet stuff, probably a glorified receptionist." That receptionist now owned 2 corporations, 12 rental units, and 4 registered trademarks. And the trash they threw away? That trash had been worth more than their mortgage. Still, I told my aunt politely, "I've forgiven them, but I'm not responsible for them." That was the real boundary. People like them confuse access with love. They believe being family means I owe them support, when they gave me none. But my support isn't free. It's earned. And they never made the down payment. Instead, I made one, on a second beach house in Destin. Furnished. Ocean view. Paid in cash. Because while they clung to pride, I invested in peace. And peace? Peace never calls you lowlife. It never kicks you out. Peace opens the door only if you remember who you had to become to afford it. By Friday, desperation arrived dressed as sentiment. A padded envelope, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's looping, oversized script. It began, "Camille, we made mistakes. We just wanted better for you." And then it slipped into emotional traps. "We were scared. We didn't understand your choices. You used to need us. We weren't ready to need you. Can't we just start over?" Not one mention of the words they'd used to cut me down. There was no real ownership of the hurt they'd caused. Just a haze of nostalgia laced with subtle guilt. At the bottom of the letter, one shaky line stood out. "We'd like to see the beach house." Of course. That had always been the point. Not me, but what I had. Not love, but access to the life they'd never believed I could create. I folded the page in half, then again, before feeding it into the shredder. They never understood this simple truth. You can't cast someone out, and then expect a guided tour of the palace they built from the wreckage you left them in. They once had a daughter, brilliant, loyal, quietly strong, and they tossed her aside because she didn't fit their definition of success. Now that daughter was on Forbes 40 Under 40, and suddenly my name mattered to them again. But I wasn't the desperate Camille they remembered. I was Camille who made the calls, and my decision was final. No visits, no tours, no do-overs. I picked up the phone and told my assistant to book a photo shoot at the new property. Sunset by the coast, clean lines, minimal style, and confirmed the cover interview. If they were going to see me now, it would be from afar. No pleading, no theatrics, just truth wrapped in designer fabric and glass walls. Let them squint at the images, at the life they doubted into existence, and realize exactly what they had thrown away. Not just the view, not just the money, but the daughter who could have carried them all if only they'd held her with something kinder than contempt. When the magazine hit shelves on Tuesday, there I was on the front, barefoot on the marble deck of my Florida beach home. Hair swept by the ocean breeze, a quiet, unshakable smile on my face. The headline read, "She was told she'd never make it. Now she doesn't answer unknown calls." Inside was a 6-page spread, stripped of melodrama. Just the facts, how I was cast out for chasing an unconventional dream, and how I became the CEO of a multi-million-dollar portfolio without a degree, without apology. Within 2 days, my parents' entire circle had read it. Friends, church members, former colleagues, they all knew. My cousin sent me a screenshot of my father's text. "I'm sick of people acting like she's a hero. She betrayed us." "No, Dad. I didn't betray you. You left me and I survived." That's not betrayal. It's transformation. By Friday, another letter came. This time, no flowery guilt, just a few lines. "We see now that we were wrong. If there's ever a place for us in your life again, we'd be grateful. Mom and Dad." I sat with it for hours. There was a time I would have rushed to call, eager to fix things, desperate to finally be chosen. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. I don't need the approval of people who couldn't even recognize me. So I wrote back, not to reopen the door, but to seal it shut. "Dear Mom and Dad, you taught me what it feels like to be unwanted, to be discarded, and in doing so, you taught me to build something no one could take away. I forgive you, but forgiveness does not mean access. You will not be part of this chapter. You tore out every page that could have included you. I wish you healing truly, but from the distance you created. Camille." No warmth, no signature flourish, just clean closure. Because some families you're born into, But the real ones are made from respect, from truth, from the people who cheer when you rise, even if you had to rise without them. It's been 6 months since they called me worthless. 6 months since I walked out with nothing but a purse, a steady okay, and a spine they underestimated. In that time, I've launched 2 new companies, invested in 5 women-led startups, and built a scholarship fund for girls like me, brilliant, overlooked, shut out of opportunity. Most mornings now, I wake to the sound of waves, to space and peace they once tried to shrink me out of. The letters have stopped. No voicemails, no attempts, just silence. And that silence no longer aches, it hums with freedom. I stopped chasing their version of love the moment I saw it was conditional. Only given when I stayed small, obedient, and confined to the story they'd written for me. I outgrew it. I rewrote it. And now, I don't need their place at the table. I've built my own hall, high-ceilinged, full of light, open only to those who saw me before the glow-up. People sometimes ask if I regret cutting ties, if I ever feel lonely. My answer is simple. Loneliness is living in a house where your voice doesn't count. Peace is waking in a home you built yourself, where every corner whispers, you did this. So no, I have no regrets. They thought they were breaking me when they kicked me out. What they really did was set me free. And if they ever pass by this quiet palace of soft light and solid legacy, they'll know. The daughter they once dismissed as a failure became the architect of everything they needed, and everything they will never have again.